Welcome everyone to you all. So we are meeting another GP Cafe virtually. So you all know, so we are the group of young doctors movement in Sri Lanka. It's called as a Spice Route Sri Lanka. It's a part of the Wonka Young Doctors Movement. Before going there, you know what's called Spice Route Young Doctors Movement Sri Lanka. As I said, this is a world organization of family doctors, young doctors movement of South Asia. So each country from this region have the national team. From Sri Lanka team, we have the very enthusiastic family doctors or GPs or trainees involving in the activities of learning and all the other interest in family medicine or in general practice. So you all know before going there, so the family doctors mean from the young doctors mean we are considered within 5 years of first postgraduate degree in family medicine or general practice. Also, you have to be an associate or full member of CGPSL. Any medical officer can be as an associate member to get in through the application through the College of General Practitioner. So this is an application form QR code, or you can get a link. So you can, or anyone to welcome for the Spice Route Sri Lanka, just a Google form, plan do it, GP career, and you have to be as a associate member or full member of College of General Practitioner. So to start, Dr. Manoj Lienage, who is our National Committee member of Spice Route Sri Lanka, to conduct the first of the session. What do you, Manoj?
Thank you, Dr. Gopit. Good evening to all of you. Today's case presentation will be conducted by Dr. Hasara Kulatunga. She is a registrar in family medicine as well as an NMCG trainee at College of General Practitioners. Today, she is going to discuss about cough caught in time. After her case presentation, there will be a discussion where you can share your thoughts. At the same time, you can put your questions in the chat box. I'm sure we are going to have a very interesting discussion, so please stay with us until the end. Without further ado, I will hand over to Dr. Hasara to start her presentation. Over to you, Dr. Hasara.
Thank you very much, Dr. Manoj. Good evening to you all. First and foremost, I would like to thank Dr. Gobit and his team for giving me this opportunity to share my story today. Let me share my screen first. And yes, hope everyone can see the screen.
Yes, visible, yeah.
Okay. Right. So today I'm going to talk about a very interesting topic. Well, cough. When we talk about cough is something that 80% of the patients who come up to our practice complains about. So there's different types of cough, and we encounter cough so much that we have got sick of it. So this is one of those case scenarios that I came across, and which was quite interesting, and hope you will be interested to know as well. Right, so straight away I'll go for the story. So this is the story of Mrs. M. She is a 36-year-old mother of 3 children with type 2 diabetes mellitus, and she presented to my clinic with cough, fever, and shortness of breath for 5 days duration. And this cough was productive and with yellowish sputum. There was no hemoptysis. She also had some accessory complaints of loss of appetite and vomiting 4 times that day. She had no history of recent travel. And also there was no history of wheezing or any chest pain, runny nose or headache. Right. So in her past medical history, hope the slides are moving. In her past medical history, she is a type 2 diabetes mellitus patient for the past 8 years. And currently she is on oral hypoglycemics, metformin 1 gram BD and glycoside 80 grams BD. Actually, her last fasting was done 1 month ago, and it was 180. And she had no regular clinic follow-up up to now. In her past surgical history, she has undergone an LSES and she had no allergies. So in her social history, she actually lives in a very overcrowded urban area in Gaul with her husband, 3 children, and her parents. They all live in a single-storied house with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. She's a housewife and she's currently taking care of her father, who's recently suffered a stroke as well. And her youngest child is 3 years old and her husband owns a grocery store. So when you encounter this social history, you would know why she didn't have a regular follow-up and why she never bothered about herself. So she's a full-time caretaker for her father as well as her 3 children. I straight away went for the examination. Her BMI is 32. She's obese, but she was very ill looking. She was mildly dehydrated as well. She was not cyanosed. She had a temperature of 101. Her pulse was 110. Blood pressure was 110 by 60. Respiratory rate was 28 breaths per minute. Her oxygen saturation was 94 on room air. Her lungs had crepitations over the left lower zone, and the CVS was normal. When I did the CBS, it was 280. And I also got a full blood count done urgently. And there was a white blood cell count of 16,000 with a neutrophil predominance. Platelet count was 360. Chest X-ray, of course, it was not available, and also she didn't have the money to get it done. So we didn't go ahead with it. So I made a diagnosis of community-acquired pneumonia with uncontrolled diabetes mellitus at this point. So what comes next? Of course, it is the management, but where do I manage her? That was deciding on the site of care. So as you all know, the curve 65 score, I use that as well. So C is for confusion, U is for urea. This is just for a recap. R is for respiratory rate more than 30. B is blood pressure, and systolic should be less than 90, and or the diastolic should be less than 60. And the age more than 65. Since urea is not available, blood urea is not available in the primary care, we can use CRB 65. So when I calculated the CRB score, it was 0. So this was the $1 million question for me. Should we admit this patient? So I'm going to put this question out to you. Should we admit? Any suggestions?
We can manage with empirical antibiotics.
Yes, we can, but where is the problem? Do I send her home or do I admit her?
Actually, Hasara, problem is the blood sugar is high in a diabetic patient. Bit tricky whether we are going home, sending the patient home or not.
Exactly.
And the if the compliance is good, I mean the blood. If we rely on the blood sugar maintenance, we can send home, but we have to think twice. I mean, because of the blood sugar.
Thank you, Dr. Chaminda. So that was
Yes.
one of the things that I thought about. Any other things that came across anyone's mind?
We could offer, I mean, the options. We would advise for to get admitted because of the risky situation given the background diabetes.
Yeah.
And if she refuses, of course, I would start on 2 antibiotics just to cover typical and atypical organisms, and closely follow up.
Okay. So you're quite right, Shane. I mean, we can't force patients to get admitted as well. But these are some of the problems that came through my mind. She was very ill looking and dehydrated, and she had a reduced saturation. 94 on air without a past history of any lung disease was a little disturbing to me. And of course, as Dr. Chaminda said, she had uncontrolled diabetes. And also the compliance. Now, already we knew that she was neglecting her usual diabetic medication because she was a full-time carer for her children and her father, and she had no proper follow-up. So what's the reassurance that we can get whether she will take this medication also? So non-compliance also was one of the problems that I encountered. And the other thing is when she goes home, there are 2 communities that she can spread this to. One is the pediatric population, and the others are her parents who are quite elderly. So the risk of spread to children as well. But despite all of that, the patient was not willing to get admitted. So it took me great 15 to 20 minutes to actually explain this situation to the patient as well as the husband. So the husband understood the situation more than her. So due to her displeasure, I referred her to the nearest government hospital, which was a teaching hospital, and she was straight away admitted. So following admission, in ward, the blood pressure dropped. It was 90/60, and the saturation also dropped to 92. Her pulse rate remained 110, but her respiratory rate was 30. So in the management, she was quickly taken to the HDU bed in the ward. And blood was sent for CRP, blood culture and ABST, and an RBS, serum creatinine and a blood urea, and an urgent chest X-ray was done. And also at the same time, the dehydration was corrected. The blood pressure was corrected as well with crystalloids. And straight away started with IV ceftriaxone and also azithromycin. Her management was hypoglycemia was done using soluble insulin. So basically, this was what happened in the ward. Right. So this was the chest X-ray. As you can see, there is haziness in the left lower lobe, and also the CRP was 116, serum creatinine was 1.3, and her blood urea was 334. But by day 2, the patient's fever settled, and she was responding to empirical antibiotics, thankfully. And she was discharged on day 4 on oral antibiotics, and her oral hypoglycemics were also changed. But does the care for this patient end there? For us as a family physician, a general practitioner, it does not end there. It is way more than that. It is also, again, managing and following up this patient as well as the family of this patient as well. Right. So just to recap on few things for you, just let me run through pneumonia and community-acquired pneumonia very quickly. So pneumonia is defined as the inflammation of the substance of the lungs. And it is usually caused by bacteria, but it can also be caused by viruses and fungi. And they usually present with an acute illness, with cough, sputum, breathlessness, and fever like our patient. And also they are together with these physical signs and the radiological changes, which is compatible usually with the consolidation of the lung. But however, it can present with more subtle symptoms as well, particularly in the elderly. In our case, she was a young patient and she presented with the typical picture. So when it comes to definitions, we are more concerned about this community-acquired pneumonia. So what is it? It is an acute infection of the pulmonary parenchyma acquired outside of the hospital. Other than that, there are fancy terms for the hospital-acquired pneumonia. Actually, nosocomial pneumonia is the broad term, where hospital-acquired pneumonia refers to the pneumonia acquired more than 48 hours after hospitalization. And ventilator-acquired pneumonia refers to pneumonia acquired 48 hours after endotracheal intubation. And other than this, there is also aspiration pneumonia, where aspiration of food material or stomach contents can lead to inflammation of the lung. And also there is pneumonia in the immunocompromised patients, particularly in HIV or immunosuppressive medication or any genetic effect. Right. So we are more concerned about this, the CAP. That is actually a leading cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide. And this clinical presentation, it can actually range from a very mild pneumonia to a very severe pneumonia characterized by respiratory distress as well as sepsis. So there is a wide spectrum associated with clinical features, which is why CAP is actually a part of differential diagnosis for almost all the respiratory illnesses. If we take the epidemiology, I'll quickly run through the community-acquired ones. The strep pneumonia, of course, plays a very big role. That is 36%. And then comes the Haemophilus influenza, and then the viruses. But if you see, 45% of the time, we can't figure out what exactly is causing this community-acquired pneumonia. Whereas in hospital-acquired and ICU-acquired, the incidence of strep pneumonia is high. And in ICU, more species like Legionella, as well as Staphylococcus aureus, plays a bigger role. So what are the risk factors? Of course, older age plays a part, and also chronic comorbidities, especially COPD, and also chronic lung diseases like bronchiectasis, asthma, and also chronic heart disease, stroke, DM, malnutrition, and also other immunocompromising conditions. And also viral respiratory tract infections that can cause secondary bacterial pneumonia, and also impaired airway protection. For example, if there's a stroke patient or patients with recurrent seizures and in anesthesia, any drugs or alcohol abuse, these things also can lead to pneumonia as well. Other than that, smoking, alcohol overuse, and also sometimes the living lifestyle also. More incidence is seen in prisons, homeless shelters, and sometimes exposure to environmental toxins like solvents and paints. If we take the microbiology, the typical ones are strep pneumonia, and the atypical bacteria, I think especially we should remember the Mycoplasma pneumonia. Respiratory viruses, I think these days it is very important that we check the influenza A and B viruses, the antigen and antibodies. And also the severe acute respiratory syndrome, coronavirus. And from the endemic fungi, there's histoplasma and cryptococcus. So little bit about this antibiotic resistance. As Shane told that he would start on 2 antibiotics, but given these incidents, now this is actually the Asian Network of Surveillance of Resistant Pathogens, and so this was done in 2000, and they did clinical isolates from 11 countries, including Sri Lanka, and they found out that there is 52% of penicillin resistance. So the fact that we are using more antibiotics for unnecessarily will cause more resistance. I have already spoken about the clinical presentation. So when it comes to the diagnosis, of course, the chest X-ray will confirm the diagnosis. But other than that, the full blood count, the CRP, blood urea, ALT, AST, they will give you an idea about the severity of the disease. And when it comes to the chest X-ray, there are typical features. For example, cavitating radiograph pattern will be particularly seen in tuberculosis, as well as, or it could be a bacterial fungus, bacterial abscess or a fungus. And miliary look can be again seen in tuberculosis. Also, multifocal lesions can be seen in Legionella, pneumococcal, staphylococcal, and also interstitial appearance can be seen in viruses. So these are some of the pictures that I found out. These are diffuse bilateral interstitial infiltrates with Mycoplasma pneumonia. And this is again the pneumocystis jirovecii, which is seen in immunocompromised patients. Typical picture of that. So coming back to this severity and site of care. So I know everyone uses these scores. One is the curve 65, as you all know, but there is a very accurate pneumonia severity index called PSI, which I will be talking about. But it is very easy. The curve 65 score has been, it's preferred by most of the clinicians because it's easier to use. And as you all know, the site of care will change. It can be as an outpatient, or it could be a hospital admission, or straight away you can convert this patient to an ICU admission. So I will go for the curve 65. So if it is 0 or 1, which is a low mortality, that is good for the home treatment. If it is 2, then there is an intermediate risk for mortality. We should consider the hospital supervised treatment. Again, it is divided into short stay and hospital and long stay. So that is decided by the consultant. Then we have group 3, which is where the curve 65 becomes 3 or more. Then it is a high mortality. Definitely, we have to admit the patient to the ICU. This was the PSI that I spoke about. Now, as you can see, this is very comprehensive, but it takes a lot of time. But even in my patient, if I had to put my patient into this category, still the patient would come as low, class 2, which is 51 to 70. So hospitalization is still required in class 4 and 5. And also class 3, you can take a clinical judgment. So even if this was very accurate, in my case, this didn't help us at all. So when it comes to the outpatient setting, which is most of the time that these patients are encountered by us. So what can we use? We can recommend amoxicillin 1 gram 3 times daily, or it could be doxycycline, or it could be an macrolide. It can be either azithromycin or clarithromycin, depending the dosage will differ. But if there are patients with comorbidities like chronic heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, renal disease, diabetes mellitus, alcoholism, malignancy, or asplenia, then we can use the combination therapy. For example, you can use the coamoxiclav and a macrolide, or a cephalosporin and a macrolide. or there are monotherapy that is available as well, such as fluoroquinolone, something like a levofloxacin, but these are not freely available in anywhere these days. So I think most of the time we go ahead with the combination therapy. I'm not going to touch on the ward setup, but it always differs from the outpatient, because we always go for an IV treatment together as a combination. And also it will differ whether there is risk factors for MRSA or Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Then of course the management will differ, because in an MRSA case, we would of course include vancomycin. Right. So as our patient was discharged, our goal is to do the follow-up correctly. So why do we need a follow-up? Because most of the time, when there is a clinical resolution after treatment, we don't follow up with a chest radiograph, because it always lags behind the clinical response. So even if the patient is doing much better, even if you repeat the chest radiograph, it will look the same or like only a little bit of improvement. So we are not going to go ahead by exposing the patient for concomitant chest radiographs when the patient comes for follow-up. However, when there is a clinic follow-up, this is a very good opportunity to review this patient's risk for lung cancer. And this is based on age, smoking history, and the recent image findings. For example, if you follow this flow chart, if there is improvement within 5 to 7 days, and there's absence of complications in the radiograph, if you do find a new mass or a nodule, or if there is mediastinal lymphadenopathy, or if you find any finding consistent with post-obstructive pneumonia, if at all, if these things are present, you can go ahead with the chest CT. If it is not there, then you can see with the criteria whether the patient is within the age 50 to 80, or if the patient is a current smoker, or if he was a prior smoker. If at all, then you can enroll the patient for lung cancer screening if he is not enrolled at all, and you can do a routine CT scan. If these things are not there, then follow-up with imaging is not necessarily needed. So this is my follow-up of the patient 1 week later. She was definitely clinically improving. Her cough was still there, but it was dry, and her appetite was improving. I checked on the family members as well. They haven't developed any symptoms, thankfully. Her compliance was actually good. I guess the ward staff had a part to play in it as well. They must have also spoken to her about the bad adverse effects of unresolved pneumonia. And again, CBS was 140, and she was advised to do on a regular follow-up. And also I also did the checking of the other non-communicable diseases as well, because it was a great opportunity when she came to visit me. And also I arranged a pap smear. She was 36 years old, and it was another opportunity because of the social outcome to screen her for depression. Turns out she had good family support from her husband and her own mother. So when it comes to general practitioners in when it comes to the prevention of community acquired pneumonia, make sure that all the patients who come to you talk about, if they are smoking, talk about smoking cessation, and the methods you can go ahead with the smoking cessation as well. And also, ideally, according to the WHO criteria, influenza vaccination is needed for whoever who has got a pneumonia. But this is not that possible in Sri Lanka. But whoever who can afford, please do refer them. And also the pneumococcal vaccination for at-risk patients, not just the patients who have got the pneumonia. So thank you. My presentation is over. So I hope there is more to discuss, and if there is any questions, please do ask. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hasara. It was a very interesting and informative presentation. Now the forum is open for discussion. You can share your thoughts and clarify your doubts also. And there's a question in the chat box. Could pulmonary TB patient present with a chronic dry cough?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again, Dr. Manoj?
Could pulmonary TB patient present with a chronic dry cough?
Yes. So pulmonary TB can present. We take acute cough between 1 to 4 weeks, and then again 4 to 3 months is subacute. After that, it is known as chronic cough. So pulmonary TB can go undiagnosed. That is one of the most common undiagnosed illnesses that has been going on in Sri Lanka. And also they can come with dry cough, but also there can be other features. For example, loss of weight is a very significant feature in that case, rather than having an acute cough. So yeah, it can. Hope I answered your question.
Any more questions?
Manoj, Sankar here. Would like to actually comment. Hasara, thank you very much. I think you almost covered most of the principles and concepts in family medicine while you're talking.
Thank
But out
you.
of everything, I think the most important thing is, I think, the holistic care you showed in this case, where you did not restrict yourself to one score or one indicator. Not just consider the CRB65 only. So you definitely you went through the entire history and the supportive factors and everything. So that's why actually you could admit this patient. Otherwise, if you were a sort of a mechanical clinician, if not you're not a good GP, you couldn't do that. So I think that is very important as a GP. That's the most important thing, I think, here, the holistic care. And later on, you went on to the comprehensive care and opportunistic health promotion, everything also. I would just like to add something there, because we were talking about a respiratory tract infection. So pneumonia and other respiratory tract infection, including asthma and COPD, have a lot of contribution from the air pollution and climate change as well. So it's a proven factor. So as GPs, I just request you all, when you are talking to your patients, talk about planetary health a bit as well, about the environmental health, air pollution, how you can reduce your carbon footprint. So that is, I think, very important, because most of the respiratory infections and respiratory illnesses, even though they are self-limiting, they have a lot of contribution and a lot of impact from the air pollution and climate change. So anyway, thank you very much, Hasara. Thanks.
Thank you
Thank
for
you very
your
much.
contribution as well, Dr. Sankar. Thank you.
So is there any question? Yeah, our absence of questions. So we will go ahead to conclude. Before that, I will share the appreciation certificate to the Dr. Hasara. So we will give it to the printed one later. But anyway, this I show you to here your certificate and appreciation. Thank you, Hasara, for the wonderful, the informative presentation. And also thank you for the audience, even after our practice, you all are joined with and discuss in the way. Okay, you all know we will meeting every month, and normally I will post in everywhere we will. So please keep on joined and discuss GP this case-based discussion. So it will be very good also for the day-to-day practice, and also for the even academically in other practical way. Thank you all. Once again, this is I saw it already about the applications QR code, and you can also, I posted here inbox about the link, so you can join the WhatsApp group. So I will show another one. Actually, we put everything in our YouTube as well. So all the previous video and all there in the YouTube. So that also you can be scan from this QR code, and you can watch everything in later even on. So we will update today's one as well. Okay. Thank you all. Is there any question anymore? So we will conclude the day. Manoj?
Yeah, there are no questions in the chat box also.
Someone asked for can you re-upload the link? Okay, about this WhatsApp maybe. Yeah, this is a link about the WhatsApp. Actually, we have the Spice Food Sri Lanka group as well, this WhatsApp group. So better you can join from this, then you can get all the information about the Spice Food Sri Lanka and GP Café and other conferences or whatever in educational material, everything. And
Gobit, I think they're asking about the YouTube link.
YouTube link. Okay. They have put thank you, but anyway, so I got a QR code here, so I will. Okay.
Probably you can post it on the WhatsApp group.
Yeah, I will put it. I will put it that even. Yeah, because all the I think earlier here on 20 videos are there, so you can watch it even from the beginning. Okay, thank you all. So absence of questions. So thank you. We'll conclude the day. Thank you all. Good night.